Sorry.
Thanks, Nance. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the summit. I hope everybody's having a good time this time. I just want to give a quick shout out to Alex, who's done an incredible job. This has been such a well organized and difficult thing to do. So, great job, Alex. Today, Mike Walker and I are going to be facilitating a group of our team that interacts with our students and faculty every single day. And we wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on what we hear on the other end of the phone. Sometimes it's fantastic stuff. Sometimes we hear things that is just super, we love our classes and couldn't be more happy. Sometimes it's not. And so we just want to bring you up to speed on what we hear, right? And our team of panelists today have really gone out of their way to kind of aggregate all of that information in one place. So Mike, as far as, for those of you who don't know me, I'm sorry. I'm Larry Dugan, Provost Fellow for SUNY Online for Enrollment and Student Success. And Mike?
And hi, I'm Mike Walker. I'm the SUNY Online HelpDesk Manager. I've been that for many, many years.
And so how we're going to work today is I'm going to have the people that are from the coaching side go first, right? No, sorry, second. And so Mike's team is going to go first. And some of the things the questions we're going to get today, a little anticipatory set for Rick Costanza. I saw him here in the room. So the questions we're going to try to answer for you all today is, what types of cooperating supports are available outside the classroom to ensure students have a quality online educational experience? Is the first question that we're going to address. The second one is, how does the role of SUNY Online success coaches support the work of online faculty? How do we work together to increase online student persistence, retention, and completion? That's our side. And Mike, you want to give your two questions?
Yeah, and also, again, among the things we'll be showing, a couple of the other questions we'll try to get to is how we can efficiently use technical support and direct online students through support channels, and then what themes are related to online student success have emerged from the technical support and success coaching perspectives. So with that, I'd really actually just like to introduce the HelpDesk analyst that'll be part of this session. For our HelpDesk, we've been a student-centric HelpDesk when I first started, but however, it's changed quite a bit over the last few years. So going back to 2012, 2013, about just less than 14% of all the contacts that we came in were faculty. The past full academic year of 2019 to 2020, it's been now up to 42.3%, which is just under what we do with students. So, and that plus the fact that most of the faculty contacts we have are much more ingrained. So they really actually take up more of our time than students do these days. So I have a quarter of the HelpDesk team on this, and they do this every single day. So they have a great insight as to what students are asking about faculty and what faculty are, what their needs are. So they're going to be going over a variety of different ones. Each one has a specific subject they want to work with, but just to quickly introduce each one of them. Nina Santiago is a HelpDesk analyst. She's been with us for almost 4 years. She also helps with a variety of other different things on the side. And most recently, she's done some faculty training sessions for the ID drop-in sessions that Alex has. She's been doing that for the past year. We also have Robert Jones, who's only been with the HelpDesk for a year and a half. However, he's also been a faculty member for at least 27 years. So he's got a lot of experience and great insight on both sides of the house, being a HelpDesk analyst and also a faculty member. And also, I believe Marcia, if she's arrived yet, Marcia is actually the second longest term HelpDesk analyst we have. She's been with the HelpDesk for almost 7 years now, and she's actually held the fort down when it comes to the night shift. She's been working the night shifts the whole time she's been with us. We've recently expanded back in 2019 to go all the way up to midnight, and she's been holding that 4 to 12 shift for the last year and a half. So with that, I will actually throw it over to Nina first to have her go over some of the things that she'd like to talk to you about.
Thanks, Mike. So my name is Nina. I'm looking at the names of a bunch of the folks who are here. Some names look pretty familiar, so I take it we have a lot of our campus admins who are part of the call, some campus administrators, some faculty members, and then other parts of the campus community. So many of you probably are already aware of the role that we play, but I wanted to start by introducing who we are, what our role is, the scope of the work that we do, and then also identifying some of the limits to the scope of our work. So as many of you are aware, we handle Blackboard technical support. And that is for just over half of the colleges in the system. So quite a number of schools that we're with. We handle a lot of the technical troubleshooting of error messages within Blackboard, identifying moving parts of technical issues as they might pertain to browser or device issues as well. So a lot of our calls will look like how-tos of walking folks through setup of tests, assignments, managing settings, identifying where error messages might be coming up. But we are very careful about what our line is and that we don't step over into the area of instructional design. And we're not able to do third-party tool support. What we try to demonstrate in the contacts that we have with students, faculty, and staff is that people can and should ask for help, and that we're here, we're approachable, and that even if we arrive at a question that might be a little bit outside of our scope, we'll try to do our best to help that user contact the appropriate support staff. So a lot of the types of resources that we'll draw upon in our conversations will be the internal knowledge base that we maintain to describe some of the more frequent issues that come up in Blackboard technical support. Other times we'll be referring to help.blackboard.com, which is documentation that comes straight from Blackboard. And then if it comes to certain questions like enrollment issues, or hardware issues, things like that, that's when we'll have the conversation with the student or the faculty member, whoever it might be, of what our role is, that we're located in Albany, albeit working from home right now, and helping them to reach out by providing contact information. So what we do tend to notice quite a bit is that a lot of folks don't realize that they're not calling their own campus. So that's sometimes one of the quick, sentences that's repeated oftentimes throughout the day. We're located up in Albany. We're a dedicated Blackboard office. And that's the point, we preface that before we redirect back to the campus for example, password resets and things like that. In an overall kind of summary of what we find in a lot of our conversations with our contacts and our requesters is that it's most practical to have students and staff contact us directly for technical issues. And I would say probably a little bit more on the line of students who are experiencing technical issues. And, in certain cases, we'll speak with a student who was referred to our help desk by an instructor when they're running into a question, and sometimes a little bit before it's narrowed down to specifically a Blackboard technical question. So sometimes when we're having that initial conversation with the student, we'll have to parse out what exactly the issue is, and then realizing, okay, perhaps having trouble accessing Blackboard means they're not able to log in and it's a username and password issue for the campus, versus a technical issue with how the web page is loading and troubleshooting some issues like that. So in some of those cases, we do have to, make sure that we have a good grip on what it is that's happening that the person needs assistance with, and then identifying if that's within our scope, and then of course working with them on that, or then trying to make a clean handoff to another office. And that's a nice little plug here to the other office that we work so closely with, which would be the SUNY online coaching staff. So that has now become a pretty big part of when we are working with students who are part of those degrees at scales through SUNY online, is asking them, do you know who your coach is? Have you been able to get in touch with them? So even if it is a technical issue, but if they have an overarching concern of, I'm not sure what's going to happen in this course, I'm worried about my grade, or I'm worried about missing my deadline. If that's something that kind of comes through in that conversation, that's oftentimes where we'll mention, that's what your coach is there to have those conversations with you about what it is you should be doing beyond this technical support conversation we're having right now. what that follow-up might be. So we do have that other relationship with our coaching and coordinators and making sure that everyone's on the same page and we're not having siloed conversations, and making sure that the student does know how to reach out for that additional support. And if they don't have that contact information, providing it over to them. So that's our quick overview of typically a lot of the work that we do. And I'll hand it over to Robert to talk a little bit more about some more of the nuts and bolts of what we do on a day-to-day basis.
All right, so hopefully you can all hear me. We just have to check that. I guess I don't do Zoom often enough to be sure. Oh, I see my transcript coming up, so I'm being transmitted. Great. So we took a look at some of the things that we hear often, questions or assumptions on the part of faculty in particular. And one of the things we talked about when we sat down to think about this was a lot of times faculty members expect the LMS to be magic. They want it to do everything, and they're often surprised by what it can't do. And one of the questions I often will get is why? Why can't it do that? And while I'm talking for the next few minutes, I'll just reinforce, I'll probably bring back that I was teaching for a long time as my principal career. And one of the questions I would also get from students is why. I taught language. There's no answer to the why question in language, and just like there's no question to the why, or no answer to the why question for the LMS. It's designed the way it is. This is what it can do. And so part of what we have to do is sort of, to coach the faculty in particular about the limitations of what it's able to do. Two of the big things that come up are tests, how to convert tests from a Word document, for example, into Blackboard, which technically doesn't happen in Blackboard. Means either they have to find some third-party provider for that, or they have to do a lot of typing and cutting and pasting. And then also that, our LMS is not designed to be a video storage or streaming platform. And, I think they kind of get mystified by the relative limitations on memory, for example. Once you start adding, well, you add one video that maybe is 45, 50 megs, you start adding 15 or 20, and now you start to slow down your whole course, make it hard to copy and things like that. Those are aspects that we have to tell faculty fairly often, that there are limitations to the LMS. We also notice from time to time that there are faculty who don't update information often. And so we would encourage, and we do encourage them to go through the process of continually managing their settings, to use date management, not just the tool in Blackboard, but also to use the idea of date management to go through and check these things. You actually have to go through and look to make sure that the date management tool did what you wanted it to do, because sometimes you think it's going to do one thing and it does another, so it has to be reviewed. But beyond dates, beyond the physical checking of it, also updating things like links, making sure that they're still valid. That has to be done, really, that has to be done before a course starts, while a course is going on. Links change. And nomenclature. We still see courses from time to time that refer to Angel or refer to the SUNY Learning Network. And some of those fossils are obviously getting pretty old. We encourage faculty who have the time to get a development shell, to work in there, play around, make mistakes before the course goes live, so that, it's not 5 or 6 weeks like we are right now into the semester and, oh my Lord, something horrible has happened. And something horrible will happen in some of those courses. One of the things I tell people who aren't familiar with us, who are outside of SUNY, is really what we are. We're a concierge triage service. We're not here for training. We do get instructors who are confused about that. They see the word help and they want whatever help they think they can get from us, and that's from soup to nuts. So we do definitely try to explain to them what we can and cannot do. We don't do trainings, individual trainings anyway, and we don't, we don't do the instructional design piece. We don't get into the theory of what they should be doing. On that token, though, when it comes to functionality, we do make suggestions to the faculty, things like keeping things simple. Don't nest, 5 or 6 subfolders down so your students have to keep clicking to find that one document you want to share with them. And the idea of quality versus quantity comes into this as well. And I think we're going to limit ourselves to 5 minutes. So I just want to make sure if I miss anything else or don't miss anything else. Yeah, and I think this is also, from a design point of view, not instructional design, just functional. From the student's view, don't design a course that's got like 19 different font sizes, colors, bold, italic, underline. We see that a lot. It's really hard to read, and maybe the instructor sees it pretty easily, but thinking, would a student be able to read this comfortably, easily, especially given the different kinds of devices that students use when they're trying to access this material? Is it handy for them? Another thing for new instructors too is I would certainly encourage them to stick to the basics when they're getting started. Don't get crafty with complicated group exercises or switching people between 5 or 6 groups during a semester. They see the word group, they think it's like in the live class, right? Oh, go find yourself a partner and work on this for 15 minutes. That's not the way the groups work in Blackboard, for example. So, to kind of keep it simple, do the basics, and not to go crazy with too much of the fun stuff that it can do. Keep a cautious eye on publisher content. Realize that too has limitations in of itself and in the way that it's going to interact with Blackboard. And I think since I'm definitely over, I'll stop there and pass it off to Marcia.
You're muted, Marcia.
Okay, I unmuted. I'm sorry. Can everybody hear me now? Yes. Okay. So I was tasked with finding out, explaining the more technical aspects of student success in a course, what faculty can do to help students succeed in their courses. So I reviewed tickets since about September of last year to see what kind of calls we were receiving. And the two most common types of calls are categories was access and calls that we had to direct back to the college. So in regards to course item availability, the most common type of thing that we see is when instructors add dates to items and then they don't get changed, especially when a course is copied. Sometimes instructors add dates to folders, and then they add dates to items inside the folders, and you get kind of this buried hierarchy of dates. So many times students aren't able to access content when they're looking for it. So what we would say is, or what I would recommend is not adding dates to items inside a folder. So if you're going to date restrict the first folder and then leave the items inside, unless you're planning to turn it on and off. The other thing is, what a lot of instructors don't know about is the date management tool and course tools, and to use that after a course copy. They can go into date management. They can list all dates for review, at least, and review the dates they have in the course. It only lists the items that have dates, or they can adjust the course dates by the number of days, both going forward or going back. It makes it a bit easier than trying to go through the content of the course to do that. The other thing that it seems to be getting better is conflicting dates between discussion forums and the links that instructors use. So students click on the link and then the forum has been date restricted, so they get the access error. Something that might help students and faculty is, instead of using the link in a content area and date restricting that and then date restricting the forum, if they use a discussion board link either on the course menu or in a content area, and then date restrict the forum. And so they only have one date restriction that they have to modify when the course is copied. And also too, that prevents students from moving to the next forum after they've submitted another forum. So if the instructor date restricts the forums, they can control what students see on the discussion board, because they don't realize students submit and they're brought back out to the discussion board. The other thing as far as access goes is, and as Robert mentioned, was links. And the big one was for this season especially was Collaborate and Zoom. A lot of students couldn't find the links. And honestly, I'd have a hard time if the instructor put the link inside a content area sometimes. So instructors have to provide a link to students, and if they can do it on the course menu, it's a bit easier if somebody's in a hurry or doesn't know the course too well to kind of find their session. So that's through the course menu add item icon, or it's great if it can be added. Some campuses are just adding it to the shell, and then that way the instructor just has to turn it on. It's more evident to do that. Another call we get a lot about is students submitted the wrong file to an assignment. The instructor asks them to resubmit an assignment, doesn't realize the student can't because they set the assignment for a single attempt. So then we have to email the instructor and let them know. So what I recommend for faculty when we're setting up an assignment is to allow multiple attempts, at least 2 attempts, and then set the score to be used. I'm sorry, I saw a question came up and I got a little distracted. So, and then to set the score using, to say, the highest grade, so that when the instructor goes into needs grading, they can just simply put a 0 in the wrong, the assignment to be ignored, and that'll move it out of needs grading. And then the grade that they provide will be the one used in the calculations. The other one it is premature and early submissions on tests. A lot of that is students don't log out of Blackboard, and nor do instructors sometimes, and we see it all the time, session expirations, and that can affect students when they're in a test. If the session expires while they're in there, then they get that error, especially on a test that is one at a time presentation. They go to submit the test and then nothing got saved since the session expiration. So we try in communicating with students on how to take the test, got to log out of Blackboard. It happens a lot of discussions, and we try and tell the students to compose on their computer and copy and paste in. With tests, if we use a one at a time presentation, it needs to save every time it moves on to another question. So unlike a all at once presentation, the students will know that they've lost their connection, that have lost their connection, and then they can get back into the test if there isn't a forced completion, which then again, we would recommend instead of forced completion, using the timer with auto submit enabled. And really, it would be helpful if instructors set the time or a communication method during that test period that they're able to be reached, because it causes students so much stress when they get pushed out of a test and are trying to get back into it, and all we can do is email. So so then the other item, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I've gone beyond my time. Am I past my time? Anyone? Well, anyways, I'll keep going until somebody cuts me off. The other thing, Mike, how am I doing?
You're good, Marcia. You're excellent. Keep going.
Okay. So then I just wanted to mention the other thing that we get a lot of phone calls about is that we have to direct back to the campus help desk. And that is usually password resets, third-party applications, and campus software, Microsoft and those applications. So I know I work at night, so it's, you get calls Friday night, whatever, the password can't be reset and they can't do it through the campus, or they can't find it. We can't find it. So that's why we really ask to have those campus information pages as detailed as possible, so we can refer the students. We do the same for Office 365. If we can get the student, to that link and help them get that going. Third party, we can't so much, but if the instructor makes sure to include that in the course, we will walk the student through whatever information is in the course. So if they can be sure to include that. And I just wanted to say too, is the best practices most unknown by instructors is exporting and archiving their course. Let's see, removing unused columns in the Grade Center, hiding them from students before they hide them from themselves, and not to clear out, ignore old attempts, because we may need them if there's a troubleshooting issue. So ignore as opposed to clear attempts. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Robert, Nina, and Marcia. Now we'll go over to the SUNY Online Coaches side of the house.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time doing that. When we look at reasons students aren't successful in online courses, there's a couple of things that bubble up to the top. One, obviously, we all know this, is that the technical issues the students have. If we, people ask us, so what problem are we trying to solve? That's clearly a problem we're trying to solve with our help desk, and they do a great job, is trying to keep students, because our bottom line is the goal is student success, right? The other thing we find that students, if you look at the list in the research of what reasons why students don't succeed, technology is one, but there's financial, there's housing, there's a ton of other things, and farther down on that list actually comes academics. It's not usually that's usually not a reason students don't succeed, is because they just can't handle the academics. It's everything else that comes along with it. And I talked a little bit yesterday briefly about the fourth area of the community of inquiry model, social, teaching, and cognitive presences, and the fourth one being emotional presence. And so when people ask what problem are coaches trying to solve, I kind of point there, right? Our students, and you heard it yesterday for those of you that were at the student presentations, that the students are absolutely thrilled that there's a person, right? When you're on campus, when you're on a campus, you have a person usually. You usually have a person you relate to, you have some kind of a emotional connection to, whether it's a faculty member, it could be the person at the coffee shop. There's all kinds of opportunities for frontline employees to interact with students that can then become their person, their confidant, if you will. Online students don't have that benefit. They're not there. They don't have that interaction with people. So when we decided to start building this. And, there's been a bunch of different models that we looked at across the country. We looked at Connecticut, Tennessee, we looked at the Iowa model. Kim, who's been leading this, has had her own model that she brought from her institution. The coaching model that came forth really was to address that problem. Those other problems that are not academic that we help the students with. We don't help with technical issues on the coaching side. We're not academic resources for our students. We are their coaches. We are there to fulfill a need of who is my person on campus. And so when we built this, and I think Kevin had the idea that we're going to do this from the point of them seeing their first ad, and inquired about SUNY, all the way through the day they graduate from SUNY and beyond. That would be their person. They started at the associate's level, then went on to a bachelor's level, and then went on to a graduate program. We're going to have that person stay with them all the way through those programs. Something that's unique to SUNY. That's something that nobody else can say they do, because they're institution-based. We're system-based, and there is a benefit to that. I remember Kim, I think it was about 3 years ago, talking about some of the models we have in concierge, and says, "Do you think we could do that in the system?" I was like, "Yeah, I think it could. I think it would work." And so we did. The team that we have put together that are the they're not concierges. Most of the time, the concierge model that we originally had, and this is something that we've had for a while, and Alex and I started working on that together back 11 years ago, is really a person on campus that could handle all online students. And to have one person, when I left my last institution, they were working with 8,000 students a year. As we heard yesterday or I think it was Monday, people from WGU, Western Governors, were on. They have a ratio of 1 to 80 coach to student, and that's more like it. Right then it's more of, and you heard the help desk talk about the fact that they're kind of a concierge model, whereas our coaches are there to build a long-term relationship. They're really to become their person, and our coaches and coordinators talk to our students a lot. Students have very positive relationships with our coaches. Our coaches start with them from the point where they actually apply. Our admission coaches take care of it before that. But they're really there for that last domain, that emotional domain, to try to get them through if they're having financial problems, if they're having any other kind of problems other than academics, because that's really the world of their academic advisor and their faculty. But we put the students through so much other stuff in higher education, right? We put them through financial aid and to fill out FAFSA forms and to re-register for courses. And I got dropped from my course and I don't know why, and I don't know who to talk to. And I'm living in my car trying to do this course. And why can't I submit a paper on my phone? By the way, 80% of our students actually do their initial interaction with us on their phones. When we bring in students into the realm, which was mind-blowing to me, just so you know. So what we've done is put together this coaching model. On every campus, we have a coordinator whose job it is to build a relationship with the campus. And then with them, they have coaches. The coordinators also work with students. We work at a ratio of about 1 to 75 for the community colleges, 1 to 150 at the 4-year comprehensives, and 1 to 200 at the graduate level. That's based on need, right? Usually coming in at the beginning of the funnel, you have a lot more needs to get started than you do by the time you get to be a graduate student. And so what we're going to talk about today is the coaches are going to talk about, the coordinators are going to talk about their responsibilities and what their coaches do every day, what they hear, and how do we actually support online faculty? We have a relationship to support the coaches, or to support the students, but how does that translate into helping faculty? And what are the overarching themes that we see emerging? There's some pretty obvious themes that our group has found, and I think they're gonna be able to talk to them. Today, talking to you is gonna be Susan Warner, who's the coordinator for the Oswego campus. She handles most of her students are primarily graduate students, and she has a coaching team that works with the undergraduate students there as well. Susan came to us from Monroe Community College, where she worked as in the schools model that they have now at Monroe, and was a coach there. And Amanda Wickham came to us from Rochester Institute of Technology. Previously, before that, she was at Cuba College, where at RIT she was a Greek advisor, right? I have pretty good memory. And I've known Amanda for a long time. She also, her and I worked together as officers for the Rochester Area College's continuing education group, where we would celebrate adult learners every year and work that. So they are going to address those questions that I just talked about, and I'm going to keep my mouth shut for the rest of the time, which will make everybody happy. Thanks, guys. It's all yours.
Okay, I'll kick it off, and I will start by talking a little bit about what the success coach's role is and what their responsibilities are. So as success coaches, we start working with students from the time they start their application to their final graduation. So we partner with campuses and admissions departments and help our students complete their application and receive an admissions decision as quickly as possible. And then we continue to support our students through the campus onboarding processes, including depositing, financial aid, advisement, registration, orientation. And then we continue with the student throughout the program, success coaching to graduation. And then if appropriate, after graduation, we encourage them to continue their education and apply to the next SUNY Online Degrees at Scale program, which we will then support them through that application process, that program to their final graduation. The work that each coach does really does vary depending on their students' needs and on their program and campus's requirements. But what doesn't vary is the approach that all of us coaches use in our work. So we all use a very holistic approach in our student success work, because we know that our students' academic experience is really greater than the sum of its parts, right? And all those parts are also very interrelated, interdependent. So we position, as Larry was saying, we position ourselves to our students as their person. We're their go-to person for anything that's related to their SUNY Online academic experience. And with that, we are answering all of their questions, tracking down answers to all of their questions. We're helping them resolve any issues that they might encounter. We work really hard to try to anticipate what does each of our students need to be successful in their program. And then we proactively provide that information, training, resources that will best set them up for success. So that holistic approach speaks to not just what we do, but how we do it too, right? So we all know that learning occurs in a very complex environment. And that environment is shaped by a multitude of factors, right? And one of those factors is relationships. The relationships that students have with their faculty, of course, their professors, but also the relationships they have to their program, to their campus, and maybe even most importantly, the relationship they have with themselves, how they relate to themselves as learners, as students. And we know that those relationships are all impacted by that unique set of academic skills, behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs that each student brings with them into the virtual classroom. So as coaches, when we're working with students, when we're working with someone who's struggling, we work with that student and of course try to identify that academic skill that might need sharpening or that academic behavior that might need tweaking in order for them to achieve a better outcome. But we also, because we're using that holistic approach, we're also going to talk about those academic beliefs and attitudes that we know impact learning, the persistence, motivation, resilience, those habits of mind that affect student success. And we're going to talk about them in a way that encourages the strengthening of their sense of self-efficacy, their growth mindset. You know, we want to strengthen those beliefs that they belong in this academic community, that their abilities, their competencies will grow with effort, that they can be successful, and that we want them here. They can succeed. So all of those beliefs, we're really focusing our conversations on strengthening. And because we built a relationship, a personal relationship with our students throughout the application process, the onboarding process, throughout our personal outreaches to them, our emails, phone calls, video chats, webinars, because we built that relationship with them, we can have some really pretty powerful conversations. And I think you saw that if you were able to listen to some of the student panels this past week, that we're able to have these pretty powerful conversations. And I'm going to say change students. And I would even dare say change us as coaches, right? And I can feel confident in that I'm speaking for the whole team to say that we truly do feel that it's a privilege to be able to work with our students in this role. We're very grateful for this opportunity. I love working with the grad students and those students who are in the four-year completion program. But I also appreciate working with this incredible team of coaches and coordinators and people like Amanda, who's doing incredible work with community college coaches and community college students, which are very near and dear to my heart. And so I know that she brings a different perspective than even I would bring. So I'm thrilled that we get to listen to what Amanda has to say too about the roles and responsibilities of coaches.
Thank you, Susan. And I just echo everything you've said of working with this team, but Susan is a fabulous coach, and I know our staff has learned a lot from Susan. Susan works with Oswego, which has the degree completion at the bachelor's level and then the master's degree. And at Monroe Community College, we are working with students at the associate's level. And that is really a wide range of the student who comes to that program. Today, we had someone that completed an application who this applicant already has a master's degree, already has a bachelor's degree. They have done it all, and they are switching fields now. And so they're able to take advantage of the Degrees at Scale online courses to get the foundation courses in psychology to then potentially move up and do different degrees. So we have students that are at that level. And then we have students who have maybe didn't complete high school, non-traditional, completed the task, high school equivalency exam. It's been a couple of years and really don't have any experience with higher education. So our students are very different. And I think as Larry mentioned, the ratios and our caseload look different too, because these students at a community college are in a different place. And one of the things that I think our team that looks a little different is that we are heavier involved in the registration process and the advising process, at least at Monroe Community College. So we spend a significant amount of our time discussing how to complete that degree and working with faculty at the college to make sure that they're going through the progression properly and are comfortable in their classes. So we are doing almost everything, I would say, except for financial aid. And that's one thing that we aren't, up to our heads in with the students for the Degrees at Scale program with Monroe.
Yep, I'm trying to. I have technical issues too, obviously. So that's their role. So that's the role with students, right? And I know that on both of your campuses, in some way, shape, or form, we work with faculty. And it's interesting. Over the past years, I've taught at 5 different campuses, and I've seen it different on every campus on how we work with how as a faculty member I would teach and the relationship that the school had. And it was always kind of isolated, right? It was kind of, this is my domain, this is my classroom. And it was someone else's job really to do some of the stuff that we do. And then for an online student, there's no place for them to go, right? And so now the coaches exist, right? So how do you work with your faculty on your campuses? Mandy, you can start this time.
Thank you. I think one of the things that we have done with MCC and with the faculty chairs and the deans and even just our campus lead is learning specifically about the classes offered in our program. We are working with students on registration, and students ask us questions. So we wanted to be very prepared, understanding what is a writing intensive course? What does that look like? And giving them a good expectation so that they log in and they utilize Preview Week, which is a fabulous tool. Our students spoke about it yesterday in the panel, that when they log in for Preview Week, they know what they're going to see, the exact content, they're going to see who their professor is, but they're going to have an idea. I know I'm going to be doing writing. I know I'm in this class. So what we've done is learned about the classes and learned about the different professors and their styles and things that they prefer. So there's professors who enjoy, office hours, or they're big in email, or they want communication to come through Blackboard. And so my team works to know those professors to help facilitate better relationships between the students and their professors.
And that is where the comprehensive four-year program and the grad program differs significantly from the community colleges, in that we don't do academic advising. That is done at the campus. They have a dedicated online academic advisor for both levels. So one way that we really help support the work that faculty are doing is that we focus on making sure the students are prepared for a strong start. So we are ensuring that they can log into their LMSs. We provide Blackboard Ultra training. We introduce them to the SUNY Online HelpDesk as their online amazing tech support team. Thank you very much. We connect them with the campus and the SUNY Online orientations. We hold virtual meet and greets, and we promote Preview Week. And I'd love to echo what Amanda had said about the value of Preview Week. That is one thing that we hear from our students, that they're anxious to sign into their classes. They're anxious to get a feel for what's coming up. They want to take a look at the syllabus. And we as coaches want that full week so that we have plenty of time to make sure that we're answering any questions, tech issues are getting handled, and they are truly ready to go on the first day. So that's a big way that we support the work that faculty is doing. And then as all our interactions, I'm sure this is the same with Amanda, all of our interactions, whether with students, whether we are responding to starfish flags that were raised by the system or by professors, or we're answering students' emails, phone calls, video chats, whether it's we're working through our systematic routine outreaches to students. In all of our interactions with students, we're making sure that we are reinforcing professors' policies and student expectations. If we're dealing with answering flags, we make sure that we're restating what professors are saying and checking for student understanding and coming up with a game plan for improvement. We try to encourage communication with professors. And sometimes for a few students, that might actually mean modeling for them what an appropriate communication to a professor might look like, right? We are connecting students with campus and SUNY resources, academic and non-academic, all the issues that Larry talked about, so that the students are properly supported and can focus on their classwork. And then I know that we also really encourage them to reach out to their professors for help. And it's interesting because I have found that grad students are often reluctant to do that. And part of that is because I think they just have tremendous respect for their professor's time. And they're also very concerned about looking incompetent to their professors. So they will spend a lot of time trying to figure things out. And they're resourceful people, they're very accomplished people, and they're usually pretty good at that. And actually, as educators, we want to encourage that, right? That's part of the learning process. But there is a tipping point, and we don't want discouragement to set in unnecessarily. So a lot of times I'm just having to encourage them to, no, your professor is concerned about your success, is committed to your success, and they want to hear from you. So even with grad students, sometimes we have to encourage them to reach out to their professors. I'm sure Amanda's got other stuff too.
Yeah, Susan, it just, pops into my head. I can't, I feel like we have that relationship with our student, but I do often find myself frequently asking one question: have you placed a help ticket? Have you called the help desk? That's one thing, right? And then the next part is, and what communication have you had with your professor about this? What are you comfortable sharing with your professor? Because we have these relationships, we can hear very detailed, personal things. And I think sometimes we're the front line, right? They kind of dump the bucket out, and then we say, wow, that's a lot. We acknowledge it. And then we say, how can we move this forward professionally? And what's the game plan? But the common questions that we're asking: have you called the help desk or submitted a help ticket? And what communication have you had with your professor? So those two pieces are huge reminders, but they come to us because we're their person. That's who they know.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's spice this up a little bit, because from what we said so far, everything sounds like it's just hunky-dory and everything just works exactly like it's supposed to all the time. We never run into issues. Students are always polite. They never say negative things about their professors to us. They never do anything like that. Our world is sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. That's not right. That's simply not the case. And so we are, I'm going to tread lightly on this. Don't worry, Mike. And all the professors, we're not going to call anybody out or anything like that. But I do want to, so we're talking about the faculty relationship. We have some scenarios, and I'm fortunate or unfortunate that I get to see all of the campuses and the issues that arise. And there have been issues, and I think probably one of the thematic issues that has arisen is once they have their person, once these students have their person, there have been a few instances where that student has tried to put us between them and their professor, right? They try to use us and to influence this professor, try to get the professor to let them take the test again, or try to get those things. And we have very, very specific pathways that we follow when it comes to these things. That's not our classroom. That's not our decision. And if it gets, I'm gonna let you guys talk about this in a second, but if it gets even not worse, but even more intense, and when diplomacy fails, in a lot of our cases, we have a very specific pathway the students have to take. And they still try to use us in this pathway, by the way, of passing, if it's a grievance level thing, they have to go to the professor first, then the department chair, then the dean, then, and it works almost the same way on every single one of our campuses. As a former professor, I'm very conscious and sensitive to the fact that we have to do this. We also have the benefit of one other person in our team. Michelle, I know Michelle's here. She's hiding in the wing somewhere. Michelle Fort, who is a student success manager here for SUNY Online, is also a professor and brings that perspective to it. So, but it doesn't always work the way we want to, right? It doesn't always work when bad things happen to good people. And we have to deal with that on occasion. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about, again, no names, and maybe I shouldn't even let you do, because then we know what colleges you're from. You know the stories. I don't want to do that. In fact, I won't let you do that because I know you have stories and I don't want to divulge what goes on at each individual campus. But those happen, right? And what we find is that the students are a lot more free sometimes to share with their coaches because they're not their faculty member. But constantly we have the basic rule is that's not us. They have to communicate with the professor. They have to go back to the professor and talk to them every single time. And I know, Mike, you probably have the same theme that you have over on the help desk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm sure any of the three help desk analysts could mention a few situations without mentioning campus names. But yeah, right. Actually, one of the part of the discussion, I believe, like Marcia was mentioning before, in regards to like allowing multiple submissions. You know, if they allow just one submission and then the student calls us up and they want us to open it up for them, we technically are able to that, but we won't touch that, right? We actually have to refer them back to the faculty member to do so. You know, sometimes they don't like hearing that, but again, we have to play tough love in that regards and make sure that they understand. So really faculty providing expectations up front and making it clear and actually giving the students a little bit of leeway, you know, just allowing one submission does make it very difficult if something goes wrong. Certainly one thing that, you know, I don't believe she mentioned it, but one thing that we obviously don't recommend, but per se, it is a feature within Blackboard, but forced completion. We, from a help desk side, don't ever want to hear that word, but we do deal with those aspects of it. And then the ramifications when a student does lose connection at some point down the road. So there's very, very specific reasons why it's forced completion should be used, and really it's almost on an in-person type of setting aspect of it if you're going to, you know, proctor or something to that effect. So yeah, I would love to actually have one of the analysts kind of, you know, bring up a couple things that they might think that would be helpful in that regards of what you're trying to say, with, you know, at the same time being nice about it. But yeah, some of the things that we have to deal with when it comes to that student professor interaction.
I can jump in, Mike.
Great.
So something that I think the way that I approach some of those conversations when students reach out to us for a request, again, in this scenario for another assignment attempt, explaining to the students what our role is, that we're located in Albany and that it is up to the instructor's discretion. You know, if I kind of hear in the student's voice that they're hesitating about reaching out directly to their instructor for that request, I'll let them know we can reach out to your instructor and let them know that this is your question, but being very, very clear about what it is we're saying, right? And setting a clear expectation about what that message will entail. So I'll give students the Reader's Digest version of it and say, okay, well, if you'd like, I can send your instructor an email that says, you know, Jane Doe contacted us, a student in your course, regarding such and such assignment. The student's looking to resubmit, and it is up to your discretion of how to proceed. If you are looking to do so, here are the steps to do so. And making it very clear to the students, you know, I can let your instructor know that this is your question, but it's still their decision. And it's something that you'll have to have that follow-up conversation between you and your instructor. And sending that message out, we can certainly do that just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. But I think just the tone of how that's explained can certainly be useful for this, so that the students understand what is going to happen next, and that ultimately it's the instructor's decision, and still trying to point them back to their instructor to have that conversation. And, you know, maybe it's going to be the conversation of, okay, well, why are you looking for another assignment attempt? Was it, you know, the wrong file that was submitted? Did you not understand the assignment? Or, you know, whatever the conversation may be, that still has to happen between the student and the instructor, and is a little bit outside of what we can do. So those messages, I do think that students enjoy when we're able to send that out, just so that it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off of them to send a cold email to their instructors. But it is a courtesy. So it's not necessarily something that we always do for every single student contact we get. It's more of a judgment call thing.
I think the, you know, so we're talking about things that our primary goal, both on the help desk and the coaching team, is to get that student back to the instructor. But here's the thing that we want instructors to hear, I think, guys, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that sometimes the problem is, where's my instructor? I'm trying to communicate with my instructor, but I can't find them, or they're not responding. That is probably the most frustrating thing for our team, because we want to really include the instructor. You know, at the state system, the University of Tennessee, they actually have a button on their every one of their courses. And on the front page of their LMS, it says, "Where's my instructor?" And you can click on that and it will send an email to the dean or the college and saying your instructor's absent from the course. I'm not saying we're going to do that. That's not anything like what we're doing, but it's a reality. Now there's students, obviously the students that submit a paper and then call their instructor right away within the next 2 minutes and say, "What's my grade?" You know, or they'll call professor at 10:30 at night because the professor was nice enough to give them their phone, and obviously they're not going to answer possibly past a certain hour. So the thing that and I know everybody goes through this in the trainings, but I can't talk about it more because there's nothing we can do about this. You know, we're not going to bypass the instructor, right? We're not going to bypass them and go to their dean or go to their department chair and say, "Hey, your instructor's not responding." But make it very clear to your students when you're going to be available for them. And if you are going to if it's going to be 24 hours before they're going to hear back from you on an email, please let them know that up front. You know, there's this expected immediacy. And I know that because when I was a student, a doctoral student, I would submit a paper and then I'd watch and update grade to see if they graded it yet. I know it's like, most of us do, right? We've all been taking online courses of what it's like to wait for that that grade or that email response or that, you know, any of this stuff. So please make it clear to your students. That's the best thing that we can do right up front is if they know enough not to expect to hear back from you for 48 hours or 24 hours, or I grade on Sunday nights after everybody's submitted or Monday mornings after everybody's submitted, just make it clear of what that is. We are at a position where there have been instances where the professor definitely was just gone. And it was not a matter of days, weeks. Then we will probably get in touch with the campus if it's been weeks before any of the students have heard from him, to find out what's going on, see if that professor's still around or not. So that probably is the one thing. We do everything we can to encourage communication. And the other thing that people accuse us of sometimes is, aren't you coddling students? You know, aren't you just making it too easy? Shouldn't they know how to do this by the time they get here? And I think we've heard on both the technology side and the student support sides instances of, you know what, the simple thing that we did by answering that question made a huge difference in that student's life, right? And I really believe that what we're doing as far as that's concerned is going. You guys can address this. I'm not supposed to be talking all the time. Susan, what do you think on that?
Well, I wanted to assure faculty that we are the coach. We are not the helicopter parent that's there trying to pave the way for the student, right? So we're concerned about long-term academic success for the student and about coaching them in what's appropriate academic behaviors. So often for students, I have someone come in and say, you know, I can't believe that my professor is not accepting this assignment late. And then a lot of times I'm just reconnecting them with, well, let me ask you, what is your goal? What are you looking to accomplish? Well, I'm looking for them to accept this late. I'm saying, well, in terms of this course, what's your long-term goal? That's your short-term goal, but what's your long-term goal? Well, I want to pass the class. Okay, so let's talk about that. So now we know that your professor controls this class. They have the authority of this class. This is their course. And have they given you clear directions and guidance? Yes. What was the directions on this assignment? Okay. So let's talk about, what do you think you can do to reach that goal of succeeding in this class? How would you communicate with your professor about this short-term request? And it is interesting. Sometimes they just need to vent and they need someone to redirect them to what is it you actually really want to accomplish. And I have found that helpful. But honestly, all of us coaches, we have tremendous respect for the authority that faculty have for their classroom. And we do not want to interfere in that, and appreciate any feedback from professors if they ever feel that we do, because that is not our goal.
Yeah, probably some of the most important training that the coaches all get is in growth mindset. And we spend a lot of time talking about growth mindset and redirection and understanding the problems that people, I just said some kind of weird alert. I think now we've gotten to the point where we can open it up for some questions. I know it's 3:30, 3:20, something in the afternoon. And you guys have been sitting on Zoom all day for 3 solid days, some of you. If you want to just ask us anything about HelpDesk, about the coaching model, about what we do here at SUNY and SUNY Online, have at it.
Larry, I just want to go back. There wasn't.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Yeah, there wasn't too many questions in the chat, but I did see one from Diane Hamilton that I wanted to kind of address. I don't quite remember exactly where it was in the session. I believe it was when Marcia was talking about some of the technical recommendations. One thing she asked in the chat, for people that didn't catch it, these recommendations conflict with the SUNY Online template restrictions. What advice do you have for the SUNY Online instructors who cannot modify the menu? Well, one thing to make it clear is that with the SUNY Online Help Desk, we're also, we're supporting SUNY Online Degrees of Scale, but we're also supporting 36 other campuses with their other individual instances. So those recommendations really more were based on that. For the SUNY Online side of the house, yeah, there is a template where certain things are restricted. And actually, in reality, it almost goes back to, for those people that saw the student session yesterday, where one of the students said that it would be nice that all their courses are kind of the same or set up the same. So with the SUNY Online side of the house, the courses are pretty much set up the same. So it's actually easier for us to kind of support that side of the house, because we know where everything is to a certain extent. And there are some limitations. If we do have certain instructors are asking about certain things and we can't do anything about it, there is an escalation process where we would actually kind of forward up to the SUNY Online instructional design team based on the feedback that those faculty members are giving us. That's certainly different than what we do on what I'll call the open SUNY side of the house, where in essence, we try to work with the faculty to kind of make the changes in the course if they have the ability to do that. So I hope that kind of makes sense. And then as Larry mentioned again, if there's any other questions in regards to what we've been talking about, or if we haven't answered something in regards to this aspect of it that you would like to ask, again, great time to be able to do that.
I can jump in and talk a little bit more about some of the themes that we see, things that students, the feedback that we're getting, that students feel has positively impacted their ability to be successful. And one thing is communication and connection with faculty. And I'm really fortunate because Oswego's faculty is amazing. And the feedback I get from students about how much they value their faculty being accessible and responsive, how much they appreciate the feedback on their papers. I've had grad students months at the end of the semester talk about how much they appreciated the specific feedback they got on an economics paper. I've had students say, another student appreciated that they actually, because a faculty member, they had a crisis and the faculty member was very flexible and allowed them to extend their deadline. They submitted a paper and were not able to receive the feedback because Blackboard closed out before they could get the feedback. They got the grade, got a great grade, but they were so incredibly disappointed that they didn't get the feedback from this professor because it's always so meaningful to them, that I actually reached out to the professor after the semester and asked if they would be willing to share that with the student. And the student was so delighted. So it's very motivating to students when they receive feedback from professors. So we as coaches really appreciate that extra time and effort that you guys spend in giving students feedback. Do you see that with community colleges, Amanda?
Definitely feedback, but I've also heard from students that they like the emails and information that comes from professors. So they're using their course information sheets and the syllabus, but they really hang on to those announcements that are posted in Blackboard. We have a couple professors that do like a weekly email. Here's what's coming in the business department. And students really, really like that. And I think it kind of circles over to a little bit of what the help desk recommended. And what a student said yesterday in the panel was she uses her phone to double check due dates. And some of her professors use the due date feature, and it pops up on the calendar in her Blackboard that she can easily review from her phone. And that classes that have done that help her manage her time better. And so making things very clear in that communication, but they hang on to every word that comes from their professor.
Absolutely. And along that line, clear and specific directions for assignments. They love that. And if you're going to use third-party tools in your courses, they love to have some direction on how to access tech help for that. I've also gotten a lot of feedback from students that they appreciate a consistency in the layout of their courses. So a template base where, gee, I know this is where I look for assignments, this is where I look for due dates. They love that. They love it when the due dates are included in the name of the module. That's a big thing that I hear from students that really helps them stay organized.
Yep, and I've had students comment on feeling comfortable reaching out to their professor because a professor has started a conversation before. You know, students, as we're registering them, they're like, oh, can I take another class with this professor? And I'm like, that professor teaches English 101. You're done with your English progression. Tell me what you liked about that professor. And they like knowing that that person was real, right? And I think we have to remind our students of that they are real, and that they are going to get out of it however much they put into it. And that's where we're constantly reminding them, what are your goals? What is it that you want to see from this? Okay, how can we get that? Okay, let's build your network. Let's reach out to your professor. They've listed a Zoom office hour. They have, set up different opportunities and reminding them that the student has to step up for that.
That's excellent. And if I could take a step back and talk about admissions processes and the onboarding processes and some of the things I'm hearing from students, it echoes all the stuff we hear from research, right? Our students want a streamlined process for admissions, and they want to receive an admissions decision as quickly as possible. They're not interested in taking an entrance exam. I hear from them, they're quick to point out that equivalent programs are either waiving entrance exams, the GRE, the GMAT during COVID, or they're eliminating them entirely. They want their professional experience and maybe their undergrad GPA to possibly waive that entrance exam. So that's a big thing for them. They want to start as soon as possible. And they come with the expectation that our programs offer multiple start dates because our competitors do, right? So that is a big want of theirs. And they also want to know how long is it going to take to complete? Like all of that information they want to know as part of the application process or even before starting the application process. And then for onboarding, I hear from students a lot about a preview week. They really want that full week because they're so nervous. They want to jump in quick, know what's coming. So that's a big issue that I hear a lot about.
Awesome. Mike, I don't know if you guys, any of your other staff, but I do see that I do have some other staff on today. Or we do have some other coaches on from, if they want to jump in, you're more than welcome to do. All I ask is that you don't tell horror stories. We're always talking about positive things here. Or any of the other SUNY online, because we do have a few extra minutes here. I don't know if Michelle's on or Kim or or anybody else that might want to jump in and talk a little bit about recommendations? If not, Nancy, I think I'm a little early. We're a little early. Maureen popped in. Do you have something, Maureen?
I did. I want to just mention one of the things that we've tried to replicate at Alfred State. So I'm an advisor. I've been an advisor for the SUNY Online program at Alfred State. It's, we have about 60 students in the program right now, but we've, in working with Christy Schmidt, we've tried to have some overlapping services, but kind of the same model, where Christy is the one point of contact to help students, figure out the right program, get enrolled, get through the admissions process. And then I've served kind of as that, while my title is academic advisor, I'm kind of that main point of contact if they're having issues with financial aid, or they're trying to figure out which service to go to for, help with whatever it may be. So we've tried to kind of replicate that coaching model and one point of contact, one-stop shop at the campus level. And that has worked really well for us, for the students, because most of our students are adult students, and they've got this much time over lunch to get this problem resolved. And having that one point of contact at the campus has been really helpful for us.
Single point of contact. Who's my person? Right? There's Kim. Kim popped up.
Hey, everybody. So I just want to add a couple of perspectives about, kind of the role and the goal of these combined teams between the coaches and the help desk. It's really all about supporting the students and the faculty, and doing what we can to help our campuses be able to support more students. So, I think that we've learned a lot since we launched the coaching team a year and a half ago, and we continue to work collaboratively with the SUNY Online Degrees at Scale campuses on how that role evolves. The campuses are very involved in that. And, I think that from what we heard from the students on the panel yesterday, there is a critical role to play, particularly as we think about getting to scale in some of these programs, to support our campuses and helping them to, as enrollments grow, to make sure that students are getting connected with the resources they need on the campus, that their issues, are getting resolved. And, I think the other important role that we play, and I really love how both Amanda and Susan, as well as Nina and Marcia and Robert from the help desk, we also, I think, have a really good sense of how, not to get put in the middle, right? And how to make sure that students and faculty, or students and other folks on the campuses, are interacting directly with each other, if that's really what needs to happen. We're going to continue to evolve as we go. So, I think that if anybody out there has questions or has feedback for us, we definitely want to hear that. Mike wants to hear that. Larry wants to hear that. Our teams want to hear that. So please let us know. But I think this has been a really great, great team. As we heard from the students yesterday, and I think we'll hear tomorrow as well, really important part of our support structure. So that's all. I just wanted to give that plug.
Thanks, Kim. Alex,
hey,
you popped up.
I did, because we have a few minutes left, and I thought I might be able to share a resource that I put together based on experiences. So Michaela or Nancy, can you give me sharing privileges here so I can share my screen? I just put together a resource with some suggestions, and I thought I'd share it with the group. Oh, good, there it is. I can do it now. And I'll pop the link for this in the chat. Let me see if I can find the chat. Here it is. Oh no, that's not correct. Sorry about that. Here we go. So I just have highlighted a couple of the suggestions, and we heard a lot of this echoed in the student panel yesterday. I'm sure we'll hear some of this. We heard it today from the coaches and analysts, and I'm sure we'll hear it tomorrow with the student panel. But when you're thinking about your design of your course and you're thinking about the facilitation of your course, taking the student's perspective, thinking about things from the student's perspective, and questioning assumptions. We heard a lot today about supporting diverse learners and about equity, inclusion, and diversity. There's kind of a theme running through a lot of the presentations in the summit on those issues. And so, making sure that students know and understand how to reach you. We talked about this in this session some, being explicit about how you would like to be contacted and addressed, modeling those behaviors for your students so they have permissions, for example, to share their preferred pronouns with you, for example, is key. If you model that, the students will then feel, better able to do that themselves. Another thing that I like to mention for faculty is to encourage students to self-reflect and to the point in my own instruction where my students keep a metacognitive learning journal alongside the course. So I'm always asking them to think about how they're learning, what they're learning, how they're applying what they're learning, how they know they have learned what they learned. And so I provide guiding questions along the side, so to keep them thinking metacognitively about what is helping and hindering their learning. I think that like any, I talk from a parent's perspective because I am one, and I think if you have very high expectations, your children, your dog, your husband, and your students will rise to those expectations. That is my firm belief, and I'm sticking to it. Even my fish rose to my expectations. So, and right, like I have very high standards, and I expect a lot from people, and I expect even more from myself. So I think having and maintaining high expectations is something that we can all do when we're thinking about our own instruction. I think never underestimate the power that you have to positively influence someone's life. I think recognizing and acknowledging student success and showing them that you see them, that you see their struggle, their challenge, and their success is so empowering to students, and especially in a technology-mediated environment where you where you have to make extra effort to kind of reach through the screen to be able to touch and feel your students, so to speak. It's so important that they feel you and that they understand that you see them. So never underestimate that power. Small tip that I do is to send students an individualized note at some point during the semester, telling them how amazing I think they are and how my students are typically pre-service educators. And so I try to help them see themselves and their future students as incredibly, positive, powerful, capable, confident, all those things. And then the last thing I'll point out is, it kind of ties in with that, to make sure that your students feel that they're going to be successful. You can't underestimate the power of that. If you believe in your student, they will believe in themselves. And I know you all know this, educators who are dedicated and have been doing this for longer than I have, know that that's why we do what we do. On this page that I shared, there is some underlying theoretical frameworks that have to do with student self-regulated learning strategies. If you're interested in why some of these things, we talked today in one of the sessions about making sure that faculty and learners know why we are doing the things that we do, or recommending the things that we do, or doing the things that we do. Well, these are some of the underlying whys for many of the recommendations and suggestions and feedback. And then further on this page, there are things from the student perspective that you can take a look at in terms of actually scaffolding student behavior, specific behaviors that will promote their online success, essentially. So that's all I had to say. And I would love to hear from any of the faculty in the room or instructional designers in the room to see if they have any questions for the panel, for the help desk. This is such a unique perspective, right? To hear from the help desk and to hear from our success coaches. So I wonder if anyone has questions or any of their own suggestions.
Alex, I just like to actually looking at your list. The one thing that kind of triggered something for me is this has been a very tough year. Obviously, a lot of faculty, a lot of students have been pushed into online learning environment for the very first time. The one thing that the help desk tries to do on every single contact that they deal with, especially on the phone calls, which is the vast majority of what we get in, is listen. So again, the theme of this is what can faculty do for online student success? I think everybody, the best thing they can do is listen, let people talk about their issues, etc. Sometimes the help desk isn't even dealing with technical issues. It's just listening to the people more or less kind of freak out and trying to get them through that next step, right? So if I had any like summary on this, on any of what anybody's been talking about, is that again, if you listen to people, try to work them through what they need, and then again, just provide the best expectations you possibly can.
All right, Nancy, Alex, I think, unless anybody else has anything else to comment or mention. All right. Thank you all. And
I want to thank you, Larry and Mike and the analysts and the coaches for providing your perspectives and for being part of the summit. It's really nice to have you all here and to see things through your lenses. Really appreciate that. I think that we are done with the summit for the day, although if you check your inbox, your mail inbox, we're having a surprise pop-up event tonight. It's Summit After Dark. So we're inviting everyone who wants to come back and hang out with their favorite beverage to come and chat. It's a social hour. We'd love to have you come and look for that info in your inbox. And we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we're going to have first up our remote student panel. So really looking forward to that. Take care, everyone. And we'll see you tonight, hopefully. And if not tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.